Hello there, this is BBoss1997 speaking, and I thought I'd make a video explaining the basics of using the soldering iron, how to use it, some different joints that you can solder, and just, all around how to use this wonderful tool. So, let's get started. Now, I've taken the liberty of heating this thing up ahead of time, and I thought I'd show you before I begin just how hot these things can get. That's pretty hot. That cuts through that like butter. You can almost draw on it from underneath like that. Yeah, that's pretty hot. Look at that. Okay, well now that you've seen how hot these things can get, I thought I'd show you the first type of joint that you can solder, which is what I call wire to wire. Now the first thing you want to do before anything else is you want to prepare the tip of your soldering iron. It's called tinning. What you want to do is sort of get a nice light even coating of solder. What should happen is that the solder should melt almost instantly when you press it. Yeah, there we go. So get a nice sort of even coating of solder on the tip and tap off the excess. It's okay because it cools almost instantly once it hits a surface that isn't like 400 degrees. I think that's about how hot these things sometimes get. Now, a side thought, people are probably just going to be whining, oh, you should probably get one of those expensive Weller soldering stations. Well, if it heats up, melts the metal, does the job, it's fine with me. You know what I'm saying? Oh, these ones can be, fire hazards. Well, if you don't leave it plugged in 24/7, they shouldn't be a fire hazard. Can you find the soldering iron? Just thought I'd show you, once again, how hot these things can get. Yep, that is glowing red. Even the tip's glowing. You can see where the tip is. That's pretty cool. Now, why don't we make our first soldering joint, the kind of joint that I call wire to wire. Now, sometimes before you solder a joint, you want to tin the tip of the wire, just like you tin the tip of the iron. So what you want to do is sort of apply heat, and sort of do a little coating of solder on the wire. Sort of helps to prepare it for soldering. Helps it grip. Now, I think you notice all the smoke coming off of the soldering. You really, unless it's not lead-based, this soldering, most of the solder you're going to find is lead-based. If it isn't, there's going to be weird flux on it and things like that might dirty the tip of your iron, or the bit as it's called sometimes. As long as you don't breathe in the fumes directly, and as long as the room you're working in is ventilated, like an open window should be fine. You don't need one of those expensive soldering fans with filters on them. Those can cost up to $100. So as long as you don't have your face over the fumes, you should be fine. Okay, so now that we've tinned that wire, why don't we solder the joint? I have now twisted the two wires I want to solder together. And so what you want to do is you want to heat up the joint a little bit. Now it's heated. Place the solder on the joint. Bring the iron down on top of it so the solder melts all over the joint. This can be a little dicey sometimes. Apply liberally. Now, as I said, the excess will sometimes come off and hit the floor. It should be fine because, like I said, it cools almost instantly. So now this joint is soldered with a generous coating of solder. It's going to take a little bit of effort to get that apart, and certainly no effort that any force such as dropping or pulling about is going to break that. It's going to take a little bit of muscle to get that apart. A quick word on solder diameter. Solder is, like wire, sold in different gauges, or different diameters of the actual circular wire cross-section. So with solder you have the outside, which is consisted of an alloy of tin and lead, and the inside, which is flux. Often the flux is rosin, which is made from pine sap, most often. So anyway, about diameter. If you are trying to solder a PC board, such as this, look at all those tiny little joints. Here, all those tiny little joints. For this particular kind of job, you're not going to want a big, thick, beefy solder like this, because, as I will explain later, that just won't cut it. What you're going to want is, you're going to want a very thin gauge. Now, say we have 2 gauges of solder here. We have, say, 1-inch lengths of solder, and we have a diameter of this first one of 1 millimeter. Let's say that one space between these lines is 1 millimeter. And for this one we have 2 millimeters. That means that if we melt 1 inch of this 1 millimeter, we will get a certain amount. And if we melt 1 inch of this 2 millimeter, we're going to get twice as much solder applied over that area than this. So that means if you want to be doing delicate soldering of microchips and whatnot, you're going to want to use a thin solder instead of a thick solder. For beefy applications like, when we say this capacitor bank, you're going to want to use thick solder that applies a large amount of solder over an area. Sometimes you're going to want to solder onto a flat surface, such as this copper plate that I have here. You can buy this at the craft store, used for decoration, but it's also very useful for if you want to use electricity, or if you want to conduct electricity. So all you have to do, this is very similar to soldering a wire. Place the tip of the iron on top of this, heat it up just a little bit. Now, what you're going to do for this is you're going to want to apply a large amount of solder in a short amount of time so that it creates a little puddle and spreads out and clings to everything it touches. So just apply a large amount. It will spread out into a puddle. And there you have it. This is a joint, once you let it cool, of course. This is a joint that's going to really take a lot of abuse. You can really put a lot of current through that and it won't complain. Sometimes you're going to have to desolder joints, which I'm going to do with this switch. All you need to do to desolder is very simple. You simply place the tip of the iron on the joint that you wish to desolder. Apply heat. The solder will melt. Simply pull the wire out. That's all you need to do. Simple. Let's do another one, shall we? Apply heat. Use the tip of the soldering iron as a little bit of a lever sometimes to push down on the joint that you want to desolder. And now we have a completely clean, wire-free switch ready for any wiring that you need to do. Sometimes if you see a component that you want on a circuit board, you're going to want to desolder on a circuit board. All you need to do is locate the component that you want, the joint on this side, and just locate it on the opposite side. And do what you would normally do, apply heat with the soldering iron. It should loosen up. As long as you keep applying heat, you shouldn't need to do anything special. See if we can get this stupid. Okay, here we go. And that's all you need to do, just pull it out, and you have your free component, like this big juicy resistor. Well, there's a short little video on how to use a soldering iron. I really do hope that this helped. Remember, soldering iron is your best friend. Treat it with respect, of course, just like the noble hot glue gun. It will help you, but treat it with respect because you do not want this to happen to you. There you have it, the noble soldering iron. This is BBoss1997 signing off. This homemade spot lamp sure has come in handy for filming it. Look at that. Nice and bright. Anything you need. See you later.